When you pour your morning coffee, read a university syllabus, or snap a photo through the glass lens of a modern smartphone, you are interacting with the legacy of Islamic culture. But look at the news, and that legacy vanishes. Instead, we see a continuous loop of burning towers, political oppression, and extremism. The dominant media framing leaves the average viewer with a definition of faith built almost entirely on fear. Mahmood Asghar, a Pakistani immigrant in Italy, watched this divide grow. He saw how news headlines and social media algorithms amplified suspicion between neighbors. In response, he wrote In Search of God to address these tensions through direct conversation. The book is structured around a real train ride to Rome. Asghar sits with a diverse group of colleagues, atheists, communists, and Christians. As the landscape rolls by, they ask him the bluntest, most unfiltered questions possible about Islam, demanding logical answers. He answers them completely. His goal isn't a religious conversion. He believes that clearing away the fog of propaganda is a necessary strategy for coexistence in a world where our daily lives are already inextricably linked. Early in the journey, Asghar's friends present a common assumption that religious devotion makes societies lazy, backward, and hostile to scientific progress. Asghar points to the foundational text of the religion. The very first word revealed to the Prophet Muhammad was Iqra, which means read. The pursuit of knowledge, far from being suppressed, is codified as a religious obligation for every Muslim. We can see the results of that mandate in the historical record. In the 11th century, the scholar Ibn al-Haytham developed the first scientific theory of vision. He refined the kamara, the Arabic term for a dark room, creating the camera obscura. Every piece of modern photography and cinema relies on the physics he mapped out. When his colleagues question the role of women in education, Asghar brings up Fatima al-Fihri. In the year 859, she founded Al-Qarawiyyin in Morocco. It issued degrees in mathematics, medicine, and astronomy, and is recognized by UNESCO as the oldest continuously operating university on Earth. Western scientific advancements stand on the foundations laid by these scholars. Our current technological state is a direct continuation of the work begun in Baghdad, Cordoba, and Morocco. The conversation on the train moves to the most pervasive modern stereotype, that Islam is inherently violent, spread by the sword, and demands holy war against the West. To unpack this, we have to look at the numbers. Historical conflicts driven by religion, like the Crusades, resulted in tragic death tolls over 2 centuries. But those figures are tiny compared to the millions slaughtered during the secular, geopolitical conflicts of the 20th century alone. Under state-sponsored atheism, communism, and nationalism, tens of millions perished through forced famines, purges, and the deployment of atomic weapons. The capacity for total destruction has historically been driven by political ideology and empire, independent of religious faith. The confusion often centers on translation. In Arabic, the word for warfare is harb. The term jihad actually translates to struggle. The Quran describes the primary jihad as the internal struggle against your own ego, greed, and flaws, alongside the effort to defend social justice. The Quran explicitly states there is no compulsion in religion. We see this verified by geography. Indonesia contains the largest Muslim population in the world today. It was never conquered by a Muslim army. The faith spread through trade and ethical conduct. Modern extremist violence is the product of political vacuums, dictatorships, and a lack of education. It is a distortion of the faith for political power, rather than its true application. The secular colleagues on the train press Asghar on another point. Why would an all-powerful creator require repetitive, strict rituals, like bowing multiple times a day or fasting for a month? Asghar reframes these acts as social tools. The 5 daily prayers require an individual to leave their home and go to a local mosque. This mandatory exercise forces people out of isolation and into daily contact with their neighbors, where they can recognize and address each other's problems. Fasting during Ramadan creates a mandatory period of empathy, ensuring everyone understands the physical reality of hunger. This pairs with zakat, an obligatory wealth tax on savings, designed to circulate capital back to the most vulnerable. These pillars are less about mystical appeasement and more about a practical, sociological blueprint for maintaining a connected and equitable society. By the time the train pulls into Rome, Asghar hasn't converted his colleagues, but the hostility in the carriage is gone. The caricature they were arguing with has been replaced by clear historical logic. This logic clarifies anxieties around Sharia. Asghar explains that 95% of the term refers to a personal moral code, covering prayer, hygiene, and family ethics. Because these are private principles, elected leaders like Sadiq Khan can manage secular cities within existing constitutions, following civil law alongside personal faith. Authentic faith does not shrink from scrutiny, it invites the hardest questions. Westerners who bypass the propaganda and study the actual texts often discover a philosophy centered on peace and discipline rather than extremism. The next time a headline is designed to inspire fear or division, you have a choice. Look past the screen, find the primary source, and dare to ask a real question. In an economy where algorithms profit from our mutual suspicion, having an unfiltered, empathetic conversation with a neighbor is the most radical and necessary act of coexistence we have left.